Jaden looked up, meeting her eyes. His voice was quiet but firm, laced with guilt and regret. "I can't do this." The silence following his confession was deafening. Rachel stood frozen at the altar, her face a mixture of shock and humiliation. The whispers among the guests grew louder, filling the void left by his words. Jaden's chest tightened, but he forced himself not to look back. His polished shoes clicked against the stone aisle as he walked away, leaving behind the life he had so carefully constructed. The golden arches of the garden blurred as he entered the estate's grand hall, his breathing uneven and his thoughts chaotic. He had spent years building an image of success, power, and control, only to unravel it in front of everyone who mattered. The grand doors swung shut behind him with a heavy thud, and for a moment the silence was all-consuming. Then a voice cut through the stillness. "Jaden." He turned sharply, startled. Zara stood a few feet away, arms crossed, her emerald dress catching the faint light filtering through the tall windows. Her expression wasn't triumphant or mocking. It was calm, steady. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes, I did," Jaden replied, his voice hoarse. "I couldn't go through with it. Not like that." Zara tilted her head slightly, studying him. "So, what now?" "You've humiliated your fiancé, shocked all your guests, and probably set fire to your reputation. Was it worth it?" Jaden sighed heavily, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I don't know. I just know I couldn't lie anymore." Back in the garden, chaos reigned. Guests murmured in disbelief, some consoling Rachel while others speculated in hushed tones about what had gone wrong. Rachel's parents were livid, their heated whispers with the wedding planner cutting through the din. The carefully constructed facade of the wedding was crumbling, leaving behind a tangled mess of emotions, rumors, and fractured pride. Inside the estate, Zara's voice softened as she asked, "So, what are you going to do now?" Jaden looked at her, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "I don't know," he admitted. "But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally figure it out." Ryan hesitated, unsure whether to push further. "If I may, sir, perhaps addressing it sooner rather than later could help mitigate the damage." Jaden sighed, setting the glass of whiskey down on the table beside him. The faint clink echoed in the quiet room. "Damage control," he muttered, more to himself than to Ryan. "Yes, sir," Ryan replied. "A statement, maybe? Something to reassure both the board and the public?" Jaden leaned back in his chair, the weight of the day pressing down on him. "And what exactly am I supposed to say, Ryan? That I left my fiancé at the altar because I couldn't lie to myself anymore? That I've spent years building a life that doesn't even feel like mine?" His voice was sharp, though not directed at his assistant. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "You don't have to explain everything, sir. Just enough to redirect the narrative." Jaden gave a hollow laugh. "Redirect the narrative. That's all this has ever been, hasn't it? Controlling the story, making sure I look like I have it all together." He shook his head. "I don't think I care about the story anymore, Ryan." The younger man stood in awkward silence for a moment, unsure how to respond. Finally, he said, "If there's anything you need, sir, I'm here." Jaden nodded absently, dismissing him with a wave of his hand. "Thank you, Ryan. That'll be all for now." As the door closed softly behind his assistant, Jaden leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees and running his hands through his hair. The fireplace crackled, filling the room with a warmth that did little to comfort him. His thoughts drifted to Rachel, her sharp, accusing words and the pain in her eyes. She didn't deserve what had happened today. She had been collateral damage in his journey of self-discovery, and the guilt of that realization was suffocating. And then there was Zara. Her calm, steady presence had unsettled him in ways he hadn't expected. She had seen through him, as she always had, and yet her parting words had carried a quiet encouragement he hadn't realized he needed. Jaden stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The room felt too small, too suffocating. Grabbing his coat, he stepped out onto the balcony that overlooked the sprawling gardens. The moonlight bathed the estate grounds in a silvery glow, and the cool night air bit at his skin. He thought about what Zara had said. Maybe it's time you stopped trying to prove yourself to everyone else and started figuring out what you really want. But what did he want? The question echoed in his mind, louder than any of the whispers or accusations he'd faced today. For so long, his life had been about appearances, about building something grand enough to silence the insecurities,